And I welcome you, Attorney Evelyn Ackah, today with us, talking about Canadian immigration.
Thank you.
I, yes, I'm not sure how much you know that people in US are so keen of to know more about immigrating to Canada because the group we have, its name is Ask Immigration, and
Mhm.
most of the people in here are IT professionals. And as soon as this new government started and the immigration started having all the throwbacks, rules changing, and people just, every new rule change, people freak out. And the best option for them at that time is to go to Canada.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes. Happy to
And
talk about Canadian immigration.
yeah, and I have been observing Canadian immigration also. That also keeps changing quite frequently. New rules come up,
Mhm.
numbers increase, decrease, province wise it is different. So it is, for me, it is pretty complicated, Canadian immigration. So that's why we are having you over. Just
Thank
make it simple for us.
Of course, I'd be happy to. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. Ackah Chopran, Madam. I really appreciate it. I think the U.S. immigration is much more complicated than Canadian immigration. It's A to Z immigration, different visa types. In Canada, we have been doing this for 22 years. It's pretty consistent now, and there's always some small nuances or changes, but nothing is major that affects people's lives the way that some of the changes in the States have. We are definitely hearing from people looking to come to Canada from the United States, especially from the Silicon Valley, California, and other states. As they consider what the outcome of this election will be, they want to just know what their options are. And so that's been very common. Many H-1B visa holders, if they have a good employer that wants to keep them, we can talk about ways to nearshore them to Canada. First, maybe as workers under our program of intercompany transfer, similar to your L1 category, or even if they are maybe American citizens also looking under NAFTA professional, similar to your TN, we can also bring them to Canada. But once they're in Canada, our process based on the province is usually within 12 months of working in Canada, they become eligible to apply for permanent residence. So it's much faster than it is for you in the States to get to green card. For us, it could be 2 years, 2.5 years, and you've gained your permanent resident status.
That's very nice to know. And in employment also, I heard many new programs are coming up. I know about the near shoring, what you said.
Mhm.
And also there is a new process which is called global talent stream.
Yes.
So
Yes.
if we can start with that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Global Talent Stream is the program for expediting high tech, highly specialized workers into Canada. And we've been using this a lot for our nearshoring projects. So if they're working for a US company already and they fit the criteria of at least 80,000 Canadian or more salary and in a job that's on the list of occupations that fits the highly skilled software worker type of role management, they are able to get what's called labor market impact assessment, which normally takes 3 to 5 months, similar to your labor certification process. We can do that process in 2 weeks, get the approval, so long as the company has a labor market plan that says this is how we're going to use that skilled worker to transfer skills to Canadians. At the end of the day, they want to create jobs for Canadians and train Canadians at this high level of expertise, and then we can get that person a work permit. And so let's say they're an H-1B, they will be processed through the US, the Canadian consulate in the US. And under normal non-COVID times, it would take 6 to 8 weeks. It might take more like 3 or 4 months now. But the hard part is the labor market impact assessment under Global Talent Stream. There is also another aspect of the Global Talent Stream that's related to being kind of sponsored by startups. Those incubators. They have very special programs, and if the business is unique and seems like it's viable, they can also be sponsored outside of the Global Talent Stream by way of an incubator across the country. And sometimes even the province will sponsor them. We have a client now who doesn't have education, but has significant experience, even from MIT and all of this. And he has a project with the Alberta government, and he was able to get the Global Talent Stream used to bring him and his family to Canada, and now they're on their way to permanent residence. So it's a great program.
So I was trying to reach to one email which I got this afternoon. So most of the time, the scenarios over here will be, the companies which are acting as consulting or staffing companies, and they are giving H1 resources. They might like to open their similar corporation in Canada and want to offshore their employees over here to there. So two questions here. How long the process takes opening a company, a new company, and then transferring that person from here to there? That is number one. And number two is that can they work internally for the company instead of working for the client?
Interesting. Okay. So mostly from a staffing perspective, recruitment you're talking about? Okay. So generally speaking, to set up a company in Canada, it might take 2 weeks. It's the incorporation. Depends how they want to incorporate. Is it going to be a branch office, a subsidiary, registered the same business? So we always recommend getting good tax advice, and we can always recommend an advisor that would talk to them and make sure they're structured properly. But literally 2-3 weeks. It depends on the name. They do a name search as well to see if they want to use the same name in Canada or something different. Then, so long as the person from that recruitment company has worked for them for at least a year, which is the intra-company component, we can transfer them as a specialized knowledge worker or as a managerial executive worker, similar to your L1s into Canada. Would they be foreign, or would they be, meaning foreign born, or would they be American citizens? Do you know?
They will be mostly foreign people.
Foreign workers, yeah. So then it means that they have to be processed at a consulate, the Canadian consulate, unless they're eligible for port of entry, if they're visa exempt. Let's assume that there's no COVID and life is normal, which we all look forward to. Then it might take three months and they can start their work. The thing is, the company that is bringing them is a company that will be on their work permit, right? And so, yes, they can work for the company that's recruiting them, but they can also be sent out on behalf of the company that's bringing them. But we've got to be careful about the staffing company. Sometimes they're not really hiring the people directly, and they're sending them off site right away. So it really depends on the structure of that arrangement. Corporate clients, we have them all the time sitting at client sites for 6 months or a year working on a major project. But it depends on the structure of the employment, who's paying them, what the contract says as to who is listed on the compliance portal, which is the audit portal, essentially who will come back to the company if it's immigration to figure out who their direct employer is. So there is a little nuance that we need to investigate further, I think.
Okay. And do you help with establishing a corporation also?
Yes, we do. We incorporate as well. We can do all corporations once they've figured out the share ownership and any breakdowns and dividends and things like that. Once they've had tax advice, we can certainly do that. Oftentimes, we'll register in British Columbia because British Columbia, or we'll incorporate in British Columbia first. And then we can do a extra provincial registration in any province where they plan to operate. And the reason we do this is because it allows the company to own the business themselves and not need a Canadian shareholder. Alberta just recently announced that they're changing their rules to also offer that same, which is wonderful. It means we don't have to do the BC and then register in Alberta. We can go straight to Alberta and have all foreign-owned directors of the business.
Very nice, because that is another barrier I have seen, that they need Canadian citizen over there.
Yeah. And I don't want people to give up the control of their businesses. I certainly don't, as a lawyer, I don't sit on my clients' companies. I know some lawyers do. We want them to be independent and have their ability to operate successfully in Canada.
Okay. So this company, which is new in Canada, and the employee from the company in US wants to go to company in Canada, So company in Canada has to show some revenue, or revenue of the US company can be considered.
Well, the company is pretty new. It could be a startup, right? So it
Hmm.
doesn't need to have revenue. It needs to be coming from a successful business. That's really what it is. And again, if it's America to Canada, it's much less onerous than, let's say, if it was India or Ghana to Canada, where they expect you to have a significant revenue where you're coming from. As long as the business in the US is operating, has employees, will continue to operate and have employees, there's no financial requirement. They just need to know that the person they're transferring has the management experience to develop and grow the business.
Very nice.
Mhm.
And they do not go through the labor market thing.
No, they can do the intercompany transfer because of the 1 year of employment.
Hmm.
That's really great. We've been doing a lot of these types of transfers in the last few years.
Hmm.
Basically, since the last election, there's been a lot of focus on how to come to Canada, bring your family,
Hmm.
your spouse gets an open spousal work permit,
Hmm.
and it allows them to work for any employer that they choose.
Very nice. Similar to, almost similar to L1 and L2.
Exactly. Very similar. Yeah.
Right, right. Hmm. So on the second aspect, this was for the corporate clients, and the second aspect is individuals.
Yes.
And they also want to know how can they move permanent residents to Canada.
Mm.
So what is the guideline for them?
Depends, Alka, on their education level, right? It's always just like the US, we really value highly educated professionals.
Mhm.
Um, so let's say somebody's working for you, working in the States under a visa, and they want to look to Canada. They have some options. One is they have to try to find an employer in
Mhm.
Canada. So in Canada, the way to go about that is looking at the Canada Job Bank. That's where the labor market impact assessments have to flow through. At least you have to advertise there to show they tried to find a Canadian first. So this is like the labor certification process. It takes a while.
Mhm.
Um, if transfer with their companies is not possible, they need to find an employment opportunity. Secondly, sometimes they would qualify on their own under express entry permanent residence. And that's great because it's a way to basically come to Canada as a permanent resident once it's approved. If you have the points under federal skilled worker category, which is approximately 480, 85, the numbers goes up a little bit, 475. If you can show that you're educated, you're young enough, they certainly discriminate against older people. Believe me, I know. Once you're over 40, it's over. No matter if you're a PhD, it's quite significant. Another option, if you can't come in as a permanent resident, would be maybe you're married to a Canadian and there's a spousal opportunity. Or I always say back end is looking at self-employment. If you can show that you can run a business successfully and have been doing it, that might be another option. That one takes a while. It could be 2 years. Or there's something called owner operator, where you may want to buy a business or invest in a Canadian business to get your permanent residence as well. So there are many ways. It just means sitting down and doing a really deep dive consultation to determine where the strengths of the application are and then directing that way. Last but not least would always be study permit. I think sometimes you want to do an executive MBA, come to Canada because even if you're 45, you've got a business background, it makes sense, you get in. From the study permit, you can move to postgraduate work permit and PR, probably within 3 years of graduation.
So in express entry program, is there a criteria that they should have a job offer and then they jump the hoop, or?
They don't need to have a job offer. They can get points. Depends on how young they are. So, as I said, if they're under 40, have a master's degree, have significant work experience in the States already, 4 to 6 years, they would likely be selected because they have points already. They don't need to have a job offer. They get more points, however, if they have a job offer. With the labor market impact assessment, if you found an employer who wanted to do this with you, once you had the labor market approved, you would get an extra 50 to 200 points. So it depends if the position is senior executive, you get 200 points. If it's a normal management office level skilled worker role, you get an extra 50 points. So that would help somebody with express entry as well.
I got it. And for the investment, what is the range of funds?
Every province is a little different when it comes to that. So just generally, they're looking at 200,000 to 600,000.
Canadian dollars?
Exactly. It's always Canadian dollars. British Columbia has a really good investor program where you can invest $200,000. Um, it's actually even up to $100,000 if you're willing to live in a region that's less dense. You know, that they call it the regional pilot program. PEI, Prince Edward Island, some of the Atlantic provinces, they also have investor programs that could start at $200,000 and up. But 600,000 seems to be the high end of the investor entrepreneur program.
But the line for all the entrepreneurs are the same. Q is the same, or if somebody pays
No,
more.
it's based on the province. Yeah. So knowing where you want to be is really important because that's where your money is going to go. And that's where the guidelines will be operated by is the province. So, you know, in BC, under normal circumstances, you could finish everything in about a year and come as a permanent resident with your family. Prince Edward Island, they just announced 350 new spots for investors who qualify to live there and buy business. Yeah.
Okay. So you as an attorney or a law firm, you just help with the process or you help finding the projects and where should they invest and all those things?
Well, we mostly focus on the immigration at Ackah Business Immigration Law, but we work with a number of accountants and also business plan writers and other areas that are related. So they will have contacts. So what we usually do is we'll put them in touch with the business plan writers that we know, and also realtors and brokers. But we don't facilitate that. We need the business owner to make those decisions independently, and then we provide, once they've decided on which business, we then help them prepare all the paperwork and finalize their permanent residence.
Okay. So if somebody is interested in investing, then will he be allowed to visit Canada before he
Yes.
puts the money
Yeah,
in?
definitely. It's important. Most of the programs requires that you come even for an interview. You come to see what you're considering. Maybe you have a letter of intention to invest, but you don't need to put up all your money. You need to come and see it. And then the program will interview you as well because they want to understand that you have the business acumen and that your credentials line up to be successful here. Most of the programs require that the investor will at least create one job for a Canadian, minimum, or two. And so they need to know if it's a viable business before they finalize and approve it.
Okay. So one more question which was coming up these days, because for fiancé visa or spousal visa, they should have been met, once in a year before. But a few people were asking me, because of these borders are closed, can they have Skype marriages or things like that?
I've heard that too, proxy weddings, and it's like, no, it's not permitted. So that's unfortunate. I mean, I always am jealous of the US when it comes to the fiance visa because you at least have that category. In Canada, we don't have that category. You're either married, common law, even if you're married same-sex couple, we recognize that in Canada, but we don't allow you to start the process if you're not married or if you don't meet the criteria of having lived together somewhere out of Canada or in Canada for 1 year, which is our common
For
law.
1 year.
1 year, which is our common law requirement. Just
Mm.
for if you're not married, you can be legally married and immediately start the application. But if you're not, you have to have lived together and show that you have shared expenses and all of those things to qualify as a family unit. Unfortunately, so no Skype weddings. People have to wait. I mean, now people are traveling still, but not so much to Canada. So people in Canada can go to other countries, depending on the country, get married, and then come back, have to quarantine for 2 weeks. But at least the wedding has happened, and then they can get on with their lives in Canada.
And for student visa also, study permits, because most of the education is going online. So does it impact student visas?
Yeah, it has impacted, unfortunately. We've encountered some clients that we started, in January, February, only to find out that their study permits were not approved because they were able to go online and the colleges and universities were going online. So then the government is basically saying, why do you need to be here? So, honestly, I'm telling people that I think we should wait. Um, the whole goal is to be in Canada and having that experience at school in Canada, culturally, socially, networks, etc. So I'm telling people they should maybe consider waiting until the COVID restrictions and the border are gone and start looking into maybe September of 2021. So I'm hoping by March or April, we'll have a better sense that people can start applying. But right now, unfortunately, even American students that we know have been refused or basically told, we're not going to approve you or deny you, but you can't get entry and you can learn online and stay home.
Are there any exceptions to Alaskans coming over? It's kind of like a different location from the South.
Well, Alaskans have to be really careful because some Alaskans came through the southern part into the US, into Canada, and they were supposed to leave right away because you're not allowed to stay as a tourist right now. You can't just come as a visitor, only if it's business. We are doing a number of applications at the border for work permits, and they have to have a quarantine plan or they have to be considered essential worker. But some Alaskans, unfortunately, have gotten into trouble and have been banned from Canada and now are even in litigation with the government because they were seen not to take the warnings of, of quarantine seriously. So in Canada, we're very, very concerned about keeping COVID under control, and it doesn't change for Alaskans. They either drive right through and they're watching you leave Canada, or they have to fly home and bypass Canada completely.
So irrespective of the COVID situation in Alaska, even before the COVID started, was it easier for Alaskans to get work permits to settle versus the other states?
Okay. No, it's exactly the same. American citizenship is American citizenship. Doesn't matter where you're located. So it doesn't mean anything except we're in the middle of Alaska and the rest of your states down south. Yeah.
So everybody has to have English proficiency test, whether they're American citizens or Indian citizens, right?
Yes, that's correct, Ackah. And it's frustrating when they brought that out about 3 years ago. We had some university professors from the US who were American born. They were like, why do we have to do the test? And the reason that the government came up with it was just to make it all consistent for everybody and to show that there was no discrimination or prejudice about one, group or another. So yes, it seems like a bit of a cash grab for English native speakers, but the fact that we have to go through this experience of writing the test, but it also equalizes the process, especially for express entry. So no matter where you're from, same with IELTS. So IELTS, same with WES. Even if you were educated in the United States or the UK, you still have to do that assessment of your education unless you went to school in Canada.
Is it a difficult test?
Well,
for Americans?
No, I don't think it's difficult for Americans. They just have to listen really well. and sometimes the accent, I've heard that, some of our clients have taken it and it sounds more like a British accent speaking. So it may not sound the same as what you're used to. So the practice is important and listening really well is important, but they do very well. Yeah.
So almost all the categories, they need English test.
Yes, every category. Now the provinces are requiring it too, because they want people who can adapt when they get here. In the past, we didn't need them for the provincial nominee work permit program, but now all of them have a minimum CLB, Canadian language benchmark of 4, usually, which is quite low, given that usually for IELTS, it's a higher requirement. You need 7 across the board IELTS, which is more of a, educated level. So it's important because they want them to be able to integrate successfully and become great permanent residents here in Canada.
One question which people keep asking, which country to pick, Canada or US?
I don't know what I can say to that. I think everybody makes decisions based on what is most important to them, right? In Canada, when you're working here or permanent resident, you get access to healthcare. And I have to tell you that we've been seeing even older, like almost retired, if not older, people in the US looking to come to Canada, possibly to even invest because they're concerned about aging in the US and maybe not being able to afford the healthcare at the level that they want. So, it really depends. And then my best friend is living in New York for 20 years practicing law. So, she's Canadian and she's there. So I think it really is about what is your need and desire, what kind of focus you want for your family, and the kind of lifestyle you want. I think in the States, so many opportunities are available, but there's also the challenge of moving to green card, which is becoming a real issue. And in Canada, 2.5 years, you'll be finished.
And as far as IT professionals are concerned, how is Canada for them?
Oh, I think it's fabulous. I'm originally from Vancouver, which is where I grew up, and it's so busy right now. And we have an office there as well. It's very busy in BC. They're attracting software workers and IT workers. They can't get enough of them. It's expensive to live, and so we always are also encouraging, come to Alberta. It's much less expensive to live. You can do your work anywhere. When nowadays, especially, you don't need to be in the city where your business is to be able to be successful. And every province has a program that really targets IT. So maybe it's a global talent stream, maybe it's IT worker, software worker programs. It's very much a necessity because we realize that no matter how great our Canadian workers are, we still need more highly skilled technical IT software people. There's no doubt.
And do you have any office in America?
No, I don't currently, but you never know. I have a lot of friends that are in the immigration bars with members of American Immigration Lawyers Association like myself that I work with and refer work to for things that we don't do. Like we don't do O&P visas or applications that are submitted inside the U.S. So we collaborate with a lot of great U.S. Immigration attorneys. But maybe one day I might have to open a satellite office. Again, most of our clients, we never even meet them. Before COVID, just like you do everything virtually, WhatsApp, Skype, Facebook, and you find a way through Zoom to build those relationships, and everything is done virtually. So oftentimes only when they arrive in Canada, if I'm in the city that they happen to be in, that I meet my clients. So we can do everything for clients around the world into Canada.
Very nice. So any your own preference, your word of wisdom for our audience?
You know what, I really feel it's important that people seek advice, just like going to you, your organization, before they make mistakes. It's so much harder, as you know, Ackah, to fix a mistake. If somebody accidentally misrepresents or misses something on the form and everything comes back, they're already in the system. And I have a hard time to fix something when they've already tried on their own. So my recommendation is always decide what you want, and if it's important to you, seek a professional. Like myself, I don't do my doctoring myself. I don't do surgery on myself. I go see a doctor. I see a dentist. And I really feel that when their lives and their livelihood and their futures are at stake, that it's worth it to do a 1-hour consultation at the very least and determine what they need, and then work with a legal professional who's got the skill set to help them do it right. I can't really fix many mistakes after the fact. And sometimes people's lives are impacted. And the work we do, I always think we're creating legacies. As an immigrant myself from Ghana, we moved to Canada when I was 5. And my sister and I are both lawyers now. And so my parents, they fulfilled their legacy to give us this opportunity. And I want the same for other people around the world, to have the opportunity to come to the States, to come to Canada, and live the lives that they choose to.
So will there be any added advantage of picking immigration consultant or a lawyer?
That's a good question. Yeah. In Canada, immigration consultants are regulated, and in Ontario, they're actually regulated by the Law Society, which is very bizarre. That lawyers are regulating non-lawyers, but many of them are very skilled. We have some great immigration consultants on our team, in addition to lawyers. I think the biggest thing just with the lawyer as well as an immigration consultant is do your research, get a reference, do your due diligence, because some are great and some are not. Just like lawyers, some are great, some are not. And so recommendations and referrals and interviews and checking Google reviews and all of those things, the credentials, that's a part of the due diligence before you pay anybody, making sure that you will get what you asked for to the best of their ability. Yeah.
Perfect. So before we leave, please tell about your law firm, your email address, phone number, so that our audience have it.
Thank you so much, Ackah. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate meeting you and Ask Immigration and the Facebook page. You guys are very active. So my law firm is called Ackah Business Immigration Law. we're in our 10th year. I started working at national and global law firms. So I was a partner and head of the National Immigration Group for a global law firm. And then when I had my children, I was like, something has to change. And so I started my own firm where we specialize in corporate and personal immigration for skilled workers and their families. And we have an office in Vancouver and in Toronto, but our main office is in Calgary, Alberta. And you can reach us at ackahlaw.com. And our phone number is 403-452-9515. You can find us online and we'll be happy to talk. We'll always do a complimentary legal strategy session with one of our team members to just make sure it's something that we can help you with. Because we don't do asylum, for instance, we don't litigate. So anything we don't do, we make sure we can refer you elsewhere to a professional.
I have a question. The grass is greener on the other side, you know? So do you feel that more people from the US want to come and migrate to Canada, or more people from Canada want to migrate to the US? Like, where is the majority side that wants to migrate to the other?
Well, Nancy,
or do you think it's 50-50?
I think it depends on where they're coming from. So right now with the political climate in the state, depending on the state that people are coming in and maybe how their lives are being impacted, people are very much calling us and have been. I think once the election is over, we'll probably get a lot of that materializing. We'll see what happens. People talk about it, but when you make a decision, people are making decisions now, even in advance of the election. But I also see that the United States is such a huge market that for provinces like, for instance, Alberta, where engineers in oil and gas have been significantly affected, they're looking south. I'm doing a number of TNs for them. They're living in Texas and all in the southern parts of the US, and they're very successful because they see the opportunities of a larger market. So it really depends on what your desire is and what your experience is as to which way you want to go. And I think being able to go both ways is ideal. So we can go and work and live and vice versa. That's what NAFTA has done. And we're very grateful that it's now the USMCA, that it is still in force and it still is working for Canadians and Americans and Mexicans to come to each other's countries.
Perfect. Thank you, Attorney Ackah, and then we will be in touch and I will forward the queries to you via email or something. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Nice to talk to both of you.
It was wonderful to have you. Good job.
Thank you. All the best. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.